customer service is actually one of my favorite topics. I think it's one that we tend to brush underneath the rug a little bit and hope that it'll take care of itself, and then you end up with one person that you just roll your eyes. It's like, oh, please don't let them answer the phone and deal with this irate customer. And so, it's important to really look at how you can handle that, because there's definitely a lot of different ways to do that. So we're going to get started because I do have a lot of information to cover, and I want to be able to get through it all. So if you don't mind, we're going to go ahead and jump in. If you guys do have questions as we go throughout the webinar today, please feel free to type those in, and we're going to address questions towards the end of the session. But Eric, if you see something that's coming up that is really about a particular point, and we want to drill down on it a little bit, feel free to hop in and we can do that. So our objective today, as far as what we're going to cover, is focusing on communicating, obviously, effectively with customers, how to create that first positive impression, how to develop and maintain the customer service standards within your entire organization, and really creating a plan for great customer service. And you can do that, and you have to be proactive about doing that. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I had an opportunity to be a corporate trainer with Dale Carnegie Training several years ago, gosh, probably about 20 years ago now. But I loved, if you have not read this book, and if you are someone that keeps a library of books in your office, I would really recommend getting this one. And it is, if you're doing any book study groups, or if you, within your organization, I know some organizations do that. If you don't, you might consider it. But this is a great book just to have as a base. My son is actually 18, and I am going to give that to him for his summer readings, because I think it's very important. But Dale Carnegie talks about, when dealing with people, remember you are not dealing with the creatures of logic, but with creatures of emotion. And especially if you're having an issue to deal with a problem, which we know we deal with that in our industry. And so it's important to be able to understand that. Sometimes people think there's so many customers out there. And now, fortunate in our industry that everyone is busy. It's a good refi market. Things are turning around a little bit for some areas as far as the housing market, and we are seeing some pricing going up. And so, when we get busy, we tend to forget how important our customers are. And it's important to keep those customers. And obviously a lot of us work on a referral basis, so not just to keep our existing customers, but have them refer other customers to us. Sometimes we forget too that we have customers, not just our external customers, but our internal customers as well. And I am in charge of all the training for Plaza Home Mortgage, a wholesale lender. And I always remind everyone that we have internal customers that are very important to us as well. And if you're working in an office, you know how important it is to be able to keep those relationships going well. So we have to remember that our focus needs to be not just on our external customers, but on our internal customers as well. So how do you create a positive company image? The first thing is, whoops, looks like I lost control there, Eric. Is to remember that the first impression does count, and it will affect your interactions. And we get very busy, and the phones are ringing, and we've got a file that has blown up, and we're just coming off of that file, and maybe we pick up the phone, and we're a little abrupt. And that comes across on the phone. So you have to remember to really stop and take a second, because people are making a judgment within those first 30 seconds. And the golden rule, obviously, is you really only have a chance to make a first impression, but there are ways to be able to really enhance that first impression and make it a stellar experience for your customers. There is a very high cost associated with bad customer service, and we'll talk about some of those. I actually have some figures, so can help to understand a little bit as far as why we need to focus on customer service. First of all, and these are very old statistics, why our customers quit. 1%, very small percentage, actually die. 3% move away. 68% quit because an attitude of indifference towards the customer by the staff. So you as a loan originator or a mortgage broker may be providing the best customer service to your customers, but you may have one person in your staff that is not, and that can have a huge impact. So if you are not providing customer service training for your entire organization, you really need to consider doing that, because you can teach them and provide them with tools to be able to help them, first of all, to manage the stress, because we are obviously in a stressful industry, but also to be able to deal with difficult situations, irate customers, and be able to turn that negative into a positive. Only 14% quit because they're dissatisfied with the product, and 9% leave because of competitive reasons. So, really you think about pricing, and I know the focus is always on pricing and rate. But if you are providing that stellar customer service, then they will stick with you, even if you end up costing just a little bit more. So what happens to our unhappy customers? Well, it actually takes 12 positive service incidents to make up for one negative incident. So that one negative incident can have a huge effect on your business. And the average wrong customer will go out and they will tell between 8 and 16 people about it. And you're the same way. If you've had really bad customer service at a store or a restaurant, what's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to tell people. And there's websites out there that you can actually go. When I travel and teach quite a bit, and if I'm in another state or city, I will actually go on to Yelp and I will read the customer service response and find out what people are saying about it. The number one thing I'm looking for is customer service. 91% of unhappy customers will not willingly do business with you again, and 70% of complaining customers will do business with you again if you resolve the complaint in their favor. So you do have an opportunity to turn that around, but you first need to be able to identify it. Second, you need to have the opportunity to actually turn it around. And obviously we know the effect of bad customer service is heavy. We can have loss of business, loss of income, and loss of job. So how do you create that customer loyalty and why it's important? Well, it costs 5 to 6 times as much to get a newer first-time customer as it does to keep a current one. And although our customers, it's a longer time between when they'll become a customer again, we do want them as far as a referral source. So it's important to build that customer loyalty. Erica was actually teaching an NMLS class in Northern California a couple weeks ago, and we had the conversation about doing loans that are smaller loan amounts. And obviously with broker compensation, changes in that, a lot of people were having the discussion about not being able to effectively do a lower amount loan and be able to make a decent income on it. And finally one guy in frustration actually said, why don't you just do the loan? Even if you don't make any money, you can actually provide that great customer service, do them a favor, and get the referrals off of it. And he had actually done one where he made like $30 on the loan. Obviously he's a broker, so he could do that. And this customer ended up sending him 3 more referrals within the next 3 weeks. So you need to think about building that customer loyalty. It's also important for us to act quickly. 56 to 70% of customers who complain will do business with you again if you resolve their problem. And they'll do that if they feel that you have acted quickly to their satisfaction. And up to 96% will do business with you again, and they will probably refer other people to you. So the first thing you need to do, and Eric, I'm assuming there's a lot of brokers on this call, that even if you're not a broker owner, if you're a loan originator, you need to look at what's happening within your organization. Take a look at your company through the eyes of your customer. What are the first things you notice? Even walking into your office, what does your office feel like? Is there someone to greet them? How about your phone mail system? Is it automated? Is it easy to navigate through? If you have users, passwords on your website, how easy is it for them to navigate through that? Really look at everything that you're doing within your organization. What have you done to make that customer feel welcome? And does anything make you feel uncomfortable? What are those things? What do you need to do to change those things? What can you do to make that customer feel more at ease?
I'm going to stop you just right there for a second, Ginger, because there's actually a question that I thought of that kind of speaks to this issue. There's the old saying, the customer's always right. But one of the things that we find challenging in the current environment is we're pulled in so many different directions at once, and we've got so many different things going on. We have to leverage technology resources and systems to be able to try and handle the capacity issue. And so how do we do it in a way that creates that value and that experience, but doesn't necessarily let our customers walk all over us? And the other thing you have to keep in mind about that, and this is just general audience for all of you listening on the call, things to think about. For example, a lot of people like to have a real person answer the phone because they feel that's a higher level of customer service, right? They don't want an automated voicemail system. They want a real person. Well, I'll tell you, I've experienced in my own life, sometimes a real person answering the phone isn't the best solution, especially if that person really doesn't know how to do anything to help me. Like, for example, one of the things that's really frustrating for me is calling customers who have they'll have what I call a virtual receptionist, somebody who answers the phone, a messaging or paging service. But I have a tendency to want to use voicemail as a communication tool. I like to leave lengthier messages that tell the person I'm calling exactly what I need and what I want to communicate to them so that they can react and respond directly. And if they get my voicemail back, they can use that as a communication tool as well so that I can pick up that voicemail message later and do what I need to do with it. It really frustrates me when I call somebody and they have an answering service that I can't give a detailed message to, because it's obvious the person is trying to type this into some sort of IM messaging system or something like that. So giving your customers the opportunity to be able to communicate the way they like to communicate or the way they want to communicate could be an enhancement. So, for example, does your voicemail give your callers the option of how to interact with you via web or internet or email? Does your voicemail greeting say, oh, by the way, if you prefer to communicate through email or web, here's our website and email address? Simple adjustments like that, giving your clients an alternate path that may be preferred for them, may be an element of creating that stronger level of service and that feeling like customers are able to move forward with you.
Well, and you bring a good point, too, is to be able to offer people the way to communicate that they choose to communicate and to find out what that is. So to provide them with those tools and to have them easily accessible and followed up on time. So, if you have email, but you're only checking your email, once every couple days, then that's not going to be an effective tool.
Agreed. Well,
a lot of people are getting into texting too. Yeah, no, it's good. I love it. And Eric, you and I always do this anyway. We have an opportunity to have so many calls back and forth as far as what obviously it takes for companies these days to be able to build customer service, leadership, sales. I mean, there's so much that goes into really creating a powerful business. And customer service, obviously, at that first impression, making that phone call is so important. I think people have gotten used to the automated voicemails now. It just needs to be something that's easy to navigate through. So call your office, find out what's doing. Or, I hate it when you call somebody's cell phone and their voicemail box is full. And, what kind of message is that sending? I mean, how often are you checking your voicemail if your voicemail box is full all the time? So think about those kind of things. So thanks, Eric. So moving on to creating the positive first impression. First of all, obviously, to be confident. Most of us have been in the industry for a while, so we have that confidence. But you may have someone in your office that's very new, and when you're new, it's hard to be able to really be confident in what you're doing. So, you might even want to think about, for some of your staff, to provide them with a script. if you're answering the phone, this is what you can say. Make sure that they know where to direct problems to. And I think that is so important. And again, one of the things that I was teaching about a couple weeks ago, we were talking about writing policies and dealing with customer complaints. And so, things you need to think about. Can a customer easily make a complaint? Is that available on your website? Do you have a process in place as far as who that complaint goes to? Is there a good follow-up? Do you have a log for that? Do you know what's happening? Do you have time frames? If a consumer complaint or a problem comes in, what do you do to resolve that? And Eric, you mentioned as far as the customer is always right. The customer is not always right, and we clearly know that. But there are certainly ways to communicate effectively with that customer to be able to let them know what the right path is for them. So they may think that a solution is good for them. They may think they're right in that regard, but we need to be able to effectively communicate what are the options for them and how you're going to resolve that. And really that's what it comes down to. Know your company, obviously, to do that. Watch what and who you're talking to. I cannot tell you how many times I've been at conferences sitting at lunch and overhearing conversations next to me of people complaining or talking, and people hear. So be very well aware of that and really focus on what your customer service commitment is within your organization. I love this little thing, this little picture I found, how important it is to really begin that first interaction with that customer, to communicate effectively with them from the very beginning. Even if you don't have time to get with them right away, or if they have a problem that you cannot get to right away, make sure you let them know that they are there, that you hear them, and that you will be with them. I think that's so important. So what are the things that you need to do when you're interacting with a customer? Your customer interaction obviously begins at the beginning of the business building process. Your customers need to have assistance throughout the entire time within your company, and you often are just the beginning point of that customer interaction. So you really need to look at how that entire interaction is going once you hand that file off. What's happening with the processor? What's happening when it gets to docs? Even all the way down to who are you using for your title company? What kind of customer service are they providing to your customers? Looking at everything through the entire transaction. And you need to remember, not just for yourself, but for your staff and your organization, that customers are not interruptions to your job. And so many times that I'm sitting in an office and the phone will ring and someone will roll their eyes, and it's like, what are you talking about? That's the reason you have a job. And so your customers can hear that, and you may be providing the best customer service, that you need to look at what everything's doing within your organization. I think our entire society has really backed off from good customer service, and I'm sure most people on this webinar would agree that it's difficult to go out and find really good customer service. So when people do find it, they are so excited about it because it just means so much to be able to have that nowadays and to be able to really stand out. And that's the difference. So much of what we're doing right now with the lender comp, things are becoming a lot more stable as far as compensation. Products that we offer are a lot more stable as far as what's happening in the industry. So how you really can stand out is by your customer service, and that's so important. We talked about this a little bit. I'm going to actually move on. We talked about the greeting, creating the welcoming environment, be attentive when someone comes in, acknowledge them as soon as they appear, as soon as they call, even if they're busy, and let them know that you will get back with them. Smile. Even if you're on the phone, you know what? You can hear that smile over the phone. It comes through. whether you are rushed or you have something else on your mind, people can hear that. Make sure to establish eye contact if possible, and tell them your name. I cannot tell you how many times that I call someone and I don't know what their name is. And make sure to ask them their name. I make a habit of, I'm old school, I actually still work from a spiral notepad every day that I have my to-do list and all my calls on. And so when I get a call in, whether it's a voicemail or I'm answering, I write the person's name down, and then I always repeat their name. Dale Carnegie also said the sweetest word to any person is that of their name. And so use their name. Don't be condescending in using their name. I've had conversations where people are like that, or use their name too often. Sometimes that's not a good thing. But if you can throw it in from time to time, it lets that individual know that you know who they are. But then also take the time to tell them your name so that they knew who they're talking to. Ask how you can help. How can I help you today? What is it that I can help you with? One of my favorite people, who is a branch manager for Plaza, always says his goal in life is to be the world's best assistant. And everyone he talks to he always says, how can I help you today? What can I do for you today? What can I do to make your day special? And stop and give your customer the full attention that they need. Stop what you're doing, and especially if it's a problem, and sit and listen to them. And also be polite and courteous. I think we all know that, but sometimes we tend to forget that. And again, this is something to share with your staff to let them know that really does come through on the phone. And always be polite and courteous to everyone, because you really don't know who you're dealing with. So two-way process as far as communication. Communication is actually involved it's just receiving, so listening to what people are saying, and then also asserting what you're saying and expressing that. And so when you are communicating, you are sending a message, but you're also receiving information back from that individual. And so many times, and I catch myself doing this too, so I have to really stop to make sure that I listen to someone. And that's why it's good. Like I say, I keep a notebook and I write notes. And so I'll listen, and then I'll write things down, and then I'll repeat back to them. So what I'm hearing you saying, or let me recap that, or so I want to make sure I understand that, and repeat it back to them, because we want to make sure that there are no barriers between that two-way process as far as back and forth. We want to be able to make sure that we are listening, understanding, and being able to express back to that individual what we have heard from them, especially when we're dealing with problems. Find out how you can help. Find out, again, begin by asking what they want. Have them be very specific. If you're going to, and especially if you're dealing with a problem, you need to know specifically what it is that they want. And again, repeat back to them what they want. As I said, I write mine down on a notepad, so I can even go back and refer to it later on. Let them know what you can and cannot do to help them. And that goes back to the customer is always right. There are things that we just simply cannot do. The markets change. Obviously, with things that have happened on the East Coast, we've had delays in fundings. If you're in New Jersey, unfortunately, there's huge delays there, and people are going to have to probably wait until homes can be inspected again. So you're dealing with some big issues there, so you have to let them know what you can or cannot do.
Exactly.
When I first started, go ahead, Eric.
I just want to jump in here really quick, Gingy, and make one comment. At the end of the day, customer service is about expectation management, right? I mean, and keep in mind that there's two ways to manage expectations. One is to adjust or reset expectations. The other is to let a customer steamroll us and set us up for failure by allowing them to start in the process with unrealistic expectations. I mean, The several studies conducted over the last couple of years by Mari talk about the number one complaint among customers who feel that their service was bad from the mortgage provider is the unconscionable delays in closing. And that comes back to the responsibility of the originator in a lot of cases, because unconscionable, what it really means is they can't understand why it didn't happen on time. And if, as an originator, we take the initiative and responsibility up front to when a customer is coming in demanding a 2-week closing or a 3-week closing, I mean, how many times have you guys seen purchase offers come through where the contract was started and then it went back and forth 6 or 7 times in counter offers, and the final contract gets ratified and it's been 15 days, but nobody ever adjusted the expected closing date. So you now get a contract, you don't even have a full 1003 on the borrower, and you're expected to close that thing in 15 days. And maybe you are working in an environment where that's practical, that you could squeeze that thing through, but how much are you setting yourself up for failure? I mean, at the end of the day, think about customer perspective on the other side of the equation, which is, if we tell them it's going to be 20 days and it takes 21, we're a jerk. If we tell them it's going to be 25 or 30 and we get it done in 22 or 23, we're a hero. And so it's all about the minute variances in perception, and a lot of that is how we communicate on the front end.
Exactly. That's so important. Oh my gosh, absolutely. So important to establish that at the beginning, let them know, as you said, what the expectation is. And if they are calling in, especially about a problem, let them know that you hear them. That's very important. My son was involved in scouting and had taken over a senior patrol and had a mom email him about an issue that she thought her son needed some attention with. And he sent me the email after he had sent it. And it was great because the first thing he said in the email, he says, first, I want you to know that I hear you and I understand your issue. And then he went on to say, I've just taken over. I do have some other priorities that I'm addressing first and that need to be addressed. Once I address those, then I will get to whatever the issue was. And then he went on to say in the email, it is your son's job to take an active role in this, and here's some things, some suggestions that he can do. And I was so proud of him because it's like, I said, my gosh, you wrote that by yourself? And he said, yeah. And it's like, you're a smart kid. But he just let her know. And you know what? He never heard from her again. And, the kid ended up doing some of the things that he needed to do. And so, again, it goes back to customer's not always right, but you need to give them a direction. Let them know you hear them. Let them know what you can do, what you cannot do, and give them a job to do too. Sometimes that's all they want. So there's a lot that goes into effective communication skills. Begin by establishing that eye contact, especially if you're face-to-face. If you're not face-to-face, stop on the phone and listen. Watch your body language. What's happening? Are you attentive to them? Even if you're on the phone, are you sitting up straight? And if you're a pacer, are you pacing? Do you need to sit down? Things that you can do, people can hear that. Make sure and ask questions. I'm a big person as far as asking questions and repeating it back to them. Provide encouragement, and especially if you're dealing with a problem situation. Say, you know what? I know this is difficult. I'm here to help you through it. This is what I'm going to do. And check for understanding. So many times we just think that somebody knows what we're going to do or how we're going to solve the problem or what we're going to do for them. And we don't actually check with them to find out that they understand what is going to happen. It's important to be able to do that. Check back with them. So I want to make sure, Eric, you and I talked yesterday, okay? We did, prepared for this. And I said, okay, so just want to confirm because we're in different time zones. And so it's 9 a.m. Pacific time tomorrow. Yes, that's right. Okay, good. And then again, smile. I cannot tell you how important that is. And summarize. Make sure and go back through, okay, so this is what I'm going to do, this is how we're going to do it, and wrap it all up together. Okay, so what if you can't help them? What if the lock's blown? What if they're not going to get that rate again? What if the home ended up, being in a flood zone, they can't get flood insurance? And that happens. and you guys deal with that sometimes on a day-to-day basis. So what are the things you can do? First of all, offer alternatives if there's possible alternatives. Walk them through the process, communicate with them, and let them know what their options are. Also let them know that you will look into an alternative for them if there's something you can do. Let me check with the lender. Let me see if there's an extension we can get. Maybe we can get a 2-day extension, a 5-day extension, a 15-day extension. I'm going to check into it. But let's look at what the alternative is if we can't do that. And start that up front, because if you don't start that up front and you say you're going to look into it and they don't know what the other option is and you come back and you say no, now you're presenting them with two issues they have to deal with. First is the no, and the second is, okay, but I'm going to tell you this. But if you let them know up front, okay, here are options. This is probably what's going to happen, but I am going to go see if we can get this other one. If you can't get the other one, then you're going to come back and say, you know what, I'm really sorry, but we were not able to get that lock extension at this price. We are able to get this. This is what we had already discussed. This was your plan. So this is what we're going to do. So shall we proceed and move on? And then, again, let them know you hear them. That is so important for people to know that you have heard them. What are the barriers? Oftentimes there are barriers, and we're busy. There's a lot of interaction going on. So what are the barriers to be able to providing that effective communication with your customers? There may be a language barrier. I do training across the country, and we do have originators within a very broad range of nationalities. Sometimes there's a language barrier. And so if you need to get help with that, make sure you get help with that so you can get effective communication. Maybe there's noise. In a lot of offices today you have open office, and so there may be some distraction there. So what can you do to defer some of that? What are other distractions as far as music? A lot of people, we all keep several windows open on our computer at a time. So if you're going to focus on an issue, sometimes you actually have to close out of those and maybe look away from them in order to be able to avoid those distractions. Lack of interest. So many times I've heard people on the phone, and you can just tell that somebody's talking but nobody's really listening. And so it's important for you to be engaged when you're communicating with that customer. Obviously avoiding put downs, that's so important. For some reason in our industry, sometimes that's acceptable, and I know you guys have to deal with it in some of your interactions with the industry as well, but it's really not effective as far as communication, and we need to really avoid that whole, what I call the family mentality. You can talk to your family certain ways, but it's important to keep it professional. Asking too many questions, make sure that when you're asking questions, they're important questions. And asking them. Sorry, Eric, I'm seeing your questions. Questions. Yeah, if you guys have questions, feel free to post them. Time. If somebody is talking to you and you have a solution and you communicate effectively, get off the phone. Don't belabor it. Make sure and say, you know what, I'm going to get right on this. And then discomfort with the topic. There are people out there who just do not handle any kind of conflict well. And so you have to be able to overcome that. And it's just something that you have to do. So what if you need to get them back? How do you handle if you have to wait for an answer? And oftentimes we do. So first of all, repeat what you're going to do. If there's research, if there's a question you need to ask, if you need to check with the underwriter, if you need to check with the lender, let them know this is what I'm going to do. Let them know realistic time frames. And Eric talked about that a little bit earlier. Obviously, I don't know who can get a loan done in 15 days. If you can, that's great. But let them know, when is realistic for you to get back with them. And then be sure to stick with it and follow up. And if you haven't heard something back, communicate with them. Say, you know what, I told you I was going to get with you by Monday, but something, there's somebody's out of town that I need to get in touch with, or they're checking into it. So I just want to let you know I'm still working on it, and I will be following up with you, and I'll give you a buzz tomorrow and let you know where we're at. And so it's very important to let you do that. Okay, Communication equation. And I keep saying to you that it is let them know that that you hear them. And the reason why is because in the communication equation, what you hear, and that means the tone of your voice, your clarity, what you're doing for expression, is actually 40% of the message. What you see or feel, so your facial expressions, again, that's smiling, how you're dressed, your posture, your body language, even over the phone. If you're doing eye contact, if you're face-to-face, what you're doing as far as gestures is 50% of the message. The words you say are actually only 10% of the message. So it really does come down to what they hear and what they feel as far as effective communication. How do you listen to your customers? Active listening equals your attending skills. Attend to immediate needs. If you need to finish something before you can give them your full attention, let them know. You know, somebody calls in, they've got a problem, and say, you know what, I want to give you my full attention. Can I give you a buzz back in 5 minutes? And that way you can sit down and be prepared. And then be available when you do that. Again, make your eye contact and smile. Develop the assertive posture, attentive posture, to be able to let them know that you're listening to them. And concentrate on it. So many times, you know, we live in a world of so many distractions, Eric. We've got email. We've got our websites going on. We've got the phone now. We've got texting. And there's so many ways to be able to be distracted that it's important for us to really stop and listen and concentrate on what somebody's saying. And again, I do this too, where I find my mind wandering off, and it's like, okay, stop. And I also find by forcing myself to take notes, it makes me concentrate on what they're saying and really be able to listen to them. Make sure to open the door to communication. Create an invitation for a solution. Let them know that you're there to help them. Ask those questions, provide encouragement, even if it's something that you cannot do for them. And develop what's called an empathetic silence. Sometimes by not rushing into a conversation, to let them kind of, the old saying goes, stew on it, to absorb what you're saying. Sometimes it's important for you to have a moment of silence, especially if you're delivering bad news or if you're delivering something that they need to make a change. Then you need to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to let you think on that for a moment, and then pause and let them think on it for a moment. Because what they need to do is process that information. You know, and part of receiving is not only to be able to hear it, we need to be able to process it as well. And so give them an opportunity to do that. When we get into our questioning skills, it's important, and actually, Eric, I have a whole other section that we're not going through in this one. We can, if you guys want to do something later on, I'm more than happy to, that goes into actually questioning skills and dealing with different personality types. And it's so important when you are working with your customers to be able to first understand what personality type they are. Obviously, be able to figure out how they want to be communicated with, but then to be able to know what kind of questions and how to phrase those questions. So it's important to ask open questions, avoid closed questions. And especially if you have someone who is a big talker. And again, if you'd like to do that webinar sometime in the future, I'd love to be able to do that, because there's certain ways that you can actually go through some of those questions with someone who loves to talk and go on and on, to be able to get them to move in a direction you want them to move. Develop paraphrasing in your questioning skill. Did you have something, Eric?
Oh, I was just saying, yes, definitely we'll have to have you back on. And actually, that's probably a good transition as we're just looking at the clock here and timing. Go ahead, and if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to see if we can get to the Q&A section. I think there was one more real important thing you wanted to share with everybody today. As people are formulating their questions and getting them posted into the chat section, if you want to go ahead and advance just in the interest of time. We definitely will have you back on, Ginger. Thank you so much for all the wonderful things you've said. But just before we break into Q&A, while people are formulating their thoughts, if there were any number one secret to exceptional customer service, is particularly in the challenges and difficulties of the environment we're in right now, what would be the most important thing that you would want to share as people are formulating their questions here?
Well, I think in terms of customer service, the most important thing for us right now is to take a look at what you're doing. What's the first thing that your customers see? And not just from you, but from your entire organization, from the top down. Because it's an entire interaction with your customer. I think it's important for us to really look at that and to decide what the image is. You set that standard. What is that standard? How should the entire experience be with the customer? And then I think secondly, one of the most important things in good customer service, and Brian Tracy, who actually just had the wonderful opportunity to write a book with him, and one of my favorite books, Eat a Frog for Breakfast, and I would always say that first thing in the morning with my staff, especially dealing with maybe locks that have fallen through, issues they need to deal with. The first thing was eat a frog for breakfast. Get the bad news out of the way. Don't delay that phone call. Communicate with people immediately. Let them know, this is what's going on. This is what I can do for you, and this is what I am going to do for you, and here are your options. So many times problems that come up could be resolved just by communicating effectively and letting people know up front what the issues are, and then setting the expectation. But really it's just a matter of, it's not just enough to be able to provide good customer service when things are good. You have to be able to provide good customer service when things go bad, and that is what creates a customer for life. Totally agree. All right, so folks, go ahead and post your questions in the chat. Understand too that if you wanted to ask a more sensitive issue or something that you might be a little embarrassed about, you do have the option of using the private chat button. You'll notice the tabs on your screen. You can ask a question privately or anonymously by using that private chat feature. If you would like to go ahead and post your questions at this point, with just this many callers on the line, it will be impractical to open up the lines for verbal communications. Please post those questions in the chat section of the screen that you're seeing. As we look forward, and like I said, one of the things I'm going to just kind of reemphasize a couple of things I saw from what Ginger shared as people are putting their comments in here. One is that you want to be positive in your thinking and approach, the always smiling approach, and being on the problem solver side of things. The customers want us to understand and recognize their challenges and concerns and work to resolve those challenges and concerns. And one of the key things that she just shared with you, I think one of the real gems of today's calls, is to run toward the problems, not away from them. Far too often in our business, the natural tendency is to, well, I'll wait to call that customer back until I have it all figured out, until I have the perfect solution to sometimes unsolvable problems. And that's the absolute worst thing we can do from a customer service standpoint, is to leave the customers hanging in a situation where they don't know what's going on, and then all they have is their own thoughts to go off of, instead of addressing the issue directly and up front. And so, my strong encouragement to all of you on today's call would be to tackle the problems directly, to reach out and talk to your customers about what's going on, what happened, and that kind of thing. There's some free gifts and tools that I want to share with you. Go ahead and please post some comments in or questions as we're moving forward. There was one question that was posted here in private chat just a second ago, Ginger, and the question was basically to the, how do you reset expectations when a customer is asking for the impossible or the unreasonable? And they actually put in
sorry, I'm struggling to read through their entire comments and understand what their question really is here. I think what it comes down to is it's a refinance situation. Your underwriting is running 3 or 4 weeks for review for underwriting, and you're backed up, and you're worried about potential lock fallout. What do you do? How do you reset expectations? How do you address with the customer the issues where maybe the customer may have even had some involvement in putting the deal behind schedule? Maybe they didn't get their documentation to you timely, or those kind of things. How do you reframe or reset expectations effectively, and particularly if it's a somewhat difficult customer? What would be your recommendation in that situation?
Yeah, it's always fun dealing with those, and it seems like the ones that are difficult ones are the ones that always end up not getting us the information that they want, for sure. I think it just goes down to, first of all, setting the expectation, and hopefully you've done that up front. If you haven't, given time frames, then to do it now and say, I just want to, and really it's a matter of being proactive. So let's say Eric's a difficult customer, and you've gotten me your information, and now you're calling. I know, I can't imagine that at all with you. It's like, there's no way. And I have to tell you, it's going to be 3 more weeks, and we need to extend this lock. So, Eric, I want to call and let you know the status of where we are with your file. First of all, I wanted to thank you for getting the information. And, as I said initially when we started this process, once we had that information, we would submit that. We did submit that, and I wanted to let you know where the turnaround time is right now with the lender. They're currently at 3 weeks for underwriting. And I know that that is longer than what you would like, and I apologize for that. However, it is a very busy time right now, and I know you understand that. And it really, by letting them, kind of setting that expectation that they do understand that, whether they do or not, it might help to kind of ease into that as well. And then to let them know. So with that, we've got 3 weeks in underwriting, so that's going to put us at this date. Your lock is going to expire this, so I need for us to look at the options. And these are your options, and go through what those options are. So when we get to that date, this is what's going to happen. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to call you every week, I'm going to communicate with you, I'm going to let you know what the status is. But that's unfortunately just where we are. It's a very busy time. Rates are really good right now. I know you understand that. But I just want to let you know. So with that, I'm going to give you a call every week, and is that okay? And ask them, is that okay if I call to check in with you? And so, Eric might come back. He's going to grovel a little bit as far as, I want a better rate or whatever. But you're going to have to hold your ground and just let them know. And sometimes it's kind of that matter of fact to let them know, and you can do it in a very nice way, but, you have to set the groundwork. You have to let them know and say, I'm going to call and I'm going to check on your file, and then, Eric might say, well, can't you get a rush on it? No, unfortunately, we can't right now. I wish we could, but unfortunately we can't. And especially on a refinance. Now, we all know on purchases there definitely are lenders that are making priorities for that. That's a different situation. And you might even share that with them. Go through the process. Sometimes people don't know what to expect because they don't know what to expect. So if you let them know up front, say, this is how our industry works, and this is the process, and I want you to understand that. And then, make sure that they do understand that and ask them. So Eric, do you understand where we're at? And so we're going to look at this on the 13th and kind of evaluate what you want to do as far as your lock. Does that sound reasonable to you?
Absolutely. And I would say, to address that same question in a slightly different way as well, too, is just the element of getting the wider picture of what's going on. I mean, at the end of the day, we're dealing with historic rates. I mean, the best interest rates in human history, literally, over the last couple of weeks here. And so, the challenge is that Mr. Customer, yes, I mean, you want to save $250 a month in your mortgage interest. I understand that. So does a lot of other people. who are all sitting at 4, 4.5%, 5% or more on their interest rate. It has completely overwhelmed the system. And you know, when you're used to dealing with, you know, we're staffed to handle 50 loans a month, and all of a sudden 500 show up, you know, the capacity is much more, the volume of potential customer need or demand is much more elastic than our ability to scale up. And our teams are doing everything they can to prioritize and to staff up to the levels to handle the volume. But at the end of the day, it's not like it won't get done. It's just a matter of when it will get done. And that's something that I guess I just need to ask for a little bit of grace on from you, that we'll work to get this done for you as effectively as possible. Is that okay? And so, you know, it's you know, being real with customers and you know, giving them the honest truth of what's going on in your environment. When you've got a processor whose pipeline went from 25 loans to 250 loans in 10 days, there's not a whole lot anybody can do about that situation, as much as you'd want it to. The other thing you might do is share with them the opposite. Is, okay, so here's the problem with rushes, for example. You know, if I drop everything to handle that, you know, to handle one file, 2 others get pushed behind, which become the rushes for tomorrow. And those 2 push 4 more back, and then those 4 push 8 more back. And all of a sudden, the system has spiraled out of control, and there's no efficiency, and everything is in complete gridlock. You know, use the traffic analogy, for example. You've all experienced, you know, being on the road when there's too many cars for the lanes that are available. What happens? Everything comes to a dead stop. And so what has to be done is, the only way to clear out those traffic jams is time and timing or route options. And if there aren't really any other more favorable routes, sometimes you pull out your book and you read in the middle of traffic kind of thing. Anyway, so, all right, just a couple of quick things that we want to do to share with you. Again, I want to thank you, Ginger, for taking your time to share with us. We definitely will have you back on. There are also some tools and resources that I want to provide to all of the attendees of today's program. One is an outline, a tool that we use with our own customers in the one-on-one coaching program work that we do. It's called the Mending Fences Conversation. It's an outline for when you've got those extreme situations where there has been a significant service failure. How do you address the issue and at least, if nothing else, settle some of the vigor or you know, violence of the customer's anger at your situation when you have had a total breakdown in service quality, when somebody has been severely negatively impacted. My own experience is what taught me this simple process. It's not rocket science. It's just taking a couple of simple steps to be able to give it to you. I mean, this came from my own personal experience, where we had a situation where I literally had a young couple who had moved to our area from over 1,500 miles away, who was literally living in a travel trailer, you know, a 25-foot travel trailer with the husband, wife, and 2 kids for 3 weeks because of a service failure that my team had. And it was just a simple, easy, you know, oversight issue because we were so overloaded. It was a VA loan issue where we ordered the appraisal before the home was substantially complete, 95% completion. If you guys are experienced with the market, I think you know kind of what will happen is you know, and in my market at the time, you know, there were no planning and zoning codes or anything like that. It was a horrible situation. It was incredibly uncomfortable for the customer. I totally understood and was frustrated with the failures that my team had in place at the time, but there wasn't really anything that we really could have done about it, other than to be a little more diligent with the upfront process and not make the same mistake for the future. Imagine what that customer would have turned out like, and imagine how many people that customer would have told about our service failure, as Ginger shared with you earlier today, if I had just left it at that. And my last conversation with that client was, you know, when we finally did get it closed, and it was obviously she was ready to kill me. I took the time to reach out to her, had the Mending Fences conversation with her, was able to diffuse a lot of that anger, and in long story short, she ended up becoming my assistant, came to work for me, and was one of the most valuable things, one of the most valuable people I've brought on my team in the 15 years of my career. It turned out to be a wonderful situation. She became a great asset to my company after that fact. as well as somebody who helped me generate a lot of business because I did take the time to reach out to them and learn from the experiences and understanding. So that conversation is something that will be emailed out to all of you. One other thing that we can offer you just before we get to some final action plans for today is what we call our strategy session. Simply the best way we've found to help people understand the true value of coaching is to actually experience it. It's a complicated and dynamic process that's very individual to each person we work with. So the best way to help you understand what coaching could potentially do to helping you grow your business faster is to let you experience it. At the end of the day, you'll walk away having invested an hour of your time with a complete action plan to handle some of your bigger challenges or obstacles. So if you're interested in receiving one of those strategy sessions, you're welcome to jump to the website or go to www.mxlcoach.com/strategy. Also, Ginger, you had some things you wanted to share for people with a new project you've launched recently, your InLine Ed program. You want to just give me a 30-second, what is that all about?
Sure. Well, as we know, compliance is at the forefront right now, and so one of the education providers I work with, InLine Ed, has developed a compliance management system. So if your company is doing any CFPB examination preparedness, they have a system that houses all your policies and procedures, as well as training, and the training is already in there for your anti-money laundering, for your fair lending, for your ECOA, your HMDA, your red flags, your maps. It's a complete compliance system. And so I'm really excited about this. It's definitely something that's been needed in our industry for quite a while. And the nice thing is it does get you compliant with your anti-money laundering as well as your CFPB examination. So there, I think you have the website up there, which is at InLineAd.com. So you can contact them and find out some more information about that.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you, Ginger, for sharing. Okay, so final action items, guys. As those of you who've been on the program before, normally have a slide to this effect. I accidentally forgot the slide this time around. But basically, here's what I want you to do. Just take one key idea today. What was the best suggestion you heard in today's program? You'll have the recording of this program. It'll be emailed out to you at the completion of actually, we've got a little bit of back-end cleanup work that has to be done. But by the end of the day, you should receive a copy of an email that have a link to be able to access the recording of today's session. You can always come back and review this program again later and add the next piece to it. So right now, what I want you to do is pick one. Pick the best idea you've heard today, create an action plan to move forward with it. By when, what action do you need to take, by when does it need to be done, and who are you going to ask to hold you accountable to following through on that action item. Then once that action item is implemented, once that idea is up and running in your daily practice, then come back to the video and pick up the second idea from there. As we're coming right at the top of the hour now, I want to thank all of you for attending. Of course, coming up next in our webinar series, I think as I've mentioned to many of you along the couple of weeks we've been doing this project now, our initial vision for this project was to create a community type environment, a place where people can come once a week to get some really valuable guidance, advice, and tips on how to get their business to the next level faster. Hopefully today you guys feel like you've really been fed, and I know I have. I picked up a couple of new ideas from Ginger that I know I'm going to be working to implement with our team over the next week and some of the things we're doing. Of course, next on the roster is Coach Brad Korn, rockstar real estate agent, expert at automating contact management. Is going to be going a lot deeper into the how to make the phone ring again concept, which will also be some great things that you can share with your business development partners, your realtors, your financial planners, your CPAs, your divorce attorneys, your HR directors for larger employers in your market, talking about how to create a network farming type approach to how you generate, identify needs and opportunities to help people, and as a result of finding needs, being able to find more leads for you and your team to be able to help. Again, Ginger, thank you so much for joining us on today's program. I am going to be hanging out for just a few more minutes if there's any additional questions. Otherwise, again, thank you so much, Ginger, for your time. And for those of you who have attended today, thank you for committing your time and effort, and hopefully you've got some great information. If there's anything our team can do to help you grow. Otherwise, take these ideas, use them, in your business, start implementing, do something with them, and make it happen for yourself and for your team. Otherwise, make it a great week, and I look forward to seeing all of you next week with Coach Brad Korn sharing some wonderful ideas.
Great. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, everyone. Have a great week.